Well, I went to see the head teacher several times about the abuse I was getting from a handful of boys. Most of them were really fine about it. Once they got used to it, not a problem. But there was a hardcore who were openly abusing me in class, calling me all sorts of names. I went to see the head several times, said, look here, this isn't getting any better. I'm going to take advice from the union, and his response was to call me in the next day. No, Nigel, I don't think your teaching's going very well at the moment. I don't think we need you on Monday. So I spoke to the NUT, made an appointment to see one of their senior solicitors, who was very positive about the idea of taking action, explained that it would take quite a while and that it hadn't been done before, but I wanted to see how far the law would protect me.
So if you are still being discriminated against, you can consider legal action and think about making a claim at a tribunal. So what exactly are tribunals?
The employment tribunals sit in approximately 25 different venues across the country. They are there mainly to hear cases in relation to employment matters, and that includes discrimination. They are not a court of law as such, but they are very similar to courts of law, but not as formal. So, for example, none of the parties or the panel that is hearing the case will wear wigs or gowns.
The employment tribunal has to be seen to be absolutely independent as part of the country's judicial system. They can't give individual claimants legal advice about their cases, and they are open to the public. You must make a written grievance to your employer before proceeding to the tribunal, even if your employment has come to an end. And you must then give your employer or ex-employer 28 days to respond to that grievance before you put in your claim. Now, if you fail to do that, the tribunal may turn away your claim at the outset. The proving of discrimination can be extremely difficult because, in my experience, very little discrimination at work, whether it's on grounds of race or gender or sexuality, is out in the open. Unless, of course, there's been some particularly nasty form of harassment. You may well be in a situation where you feel, for example, that you've been passed over for promotion because of your sexuality. But how do you prove this? One way to get information that may help your case, or at least clarify the issues, is to send your employer a sexual orientation questionnaire. The deadline for bringing any sort of discrimination grievance is 3 months, or less 1 day, from the date the discrimination occurred. So you must bear that in mind. If, as I've been talking about, you've lodged a written grievance with your employer, then that may extend the deadline. But you really must be very careful about not missing the boat altogether. So if you're in any doubt at all about whether you have a possible legal claim or not, and what the deadline will be, then you really need to seek advice, legal advice, at an early stage, sooner rather than later. You have to lodge the claim by completing a form called an ET1. This can be obtained from the Employment Tribunal service itself, or you can complete it online and submit it that way. Now, the form is not particularly complicated or difficult to understand, and you don't necessarily need to get legal advice to fill it in. It doesn't need to be written in legal language, for example. But whether you get legal advice or not, you should think very carefully about what you put on that form, because you are setting out the whole of your claim there. You may be able to get free advice, for example, from a law centre who specialises in employment and discrimination. You may also be able to get some free advice and help in preparing your case from a solicitor who has a contract to provide legal help under the government scheme. But bear in mind that's only available to people on a low income. Other solicitors do of course prepare cases for the tribunal, but if you don't qualify for the legal help scheme, then you're going to be charged at an hourly rate, and that can get expensive. Now, if you don't have any of those options open to you, you shouldn't be afraid of representing yourself at the tribunal, because tribunals are relatively informal and they're used to unrepresented claimants, and they will be sympathetic and helpful. You will need to prepare your case by, for example, preparing a written witness statement, and written witness statements for anybody who's going to come to the tribunal and support your case. You'll also need to agree a bundle of relevant documents with your opponent. One thing you should do if you can't get legal help free or can't afford to pay for it is to check any insurance policies that you have, like household insurance, because you may well find that you are covered for some legal expenses.
The way that employment tribunals operate is that all the hearings are before a panel made up of 3 members. The chairman or chairwoman of the panel is a qualified lawyer who is very experienced in employment law. They will also sit with what are called 2 wing members, who are usually not legally qualified, but they will have lots of experience in industrial relations generally.
If you win your case at the tribunal, you will be awarded any direct financial losses arising from the discrimination. For example, if you've been dismissed because of your sexual orientation, you can claim your net loss of earnings. You can also claim a sum for injury to feelings. That is to reflect the hurt or humiliation or embarrassment that has been caused by your employer's action.
Well, if the claimant loses their case and they are unhappy with the tribunal decision, then there's really 2 forms of appeal, if one can call it that. The first is they can have the decision reviewed by the same tribunal if it's in the interest of justice to do so, for example, or secondly, they can appeal to the Employment Appeal Tribunal, but they can only do so on a point of law. And should they wish to follow the second procedure, then really they should take some legal advice before doing so.
Whatever the outcome, going to an employment tribunal isn't an easy option. Make sure that you are well advised, supported, and have looked at all the options before going down this path.